In this podcast, you will experience an informative and necessary conversation that contains updates regarding the upcoming school year for students at ASCC, as well as the importance of inclusion. Some of you may hear audio static. However, we hope that this does not take away from your experience and what this important conversation has to offer. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to start this podcast by introducing what Pacific Talk is about. There are so many things going around, not just in our world, but also in our Pacific community, which includes our Melanesian, Polynesian, and Micronesian communities, and all the communities within those. A lot of conversations are happening, and there are voices and thoughts that need to be highlighted. So welcome to Pacific Talk, a space created by USAID to allow space for voices and stories to be brought to the forefront. We're here to celebrate and we're here to learn and grow. Today we have, I am Desiree Washington. I am the communication specialist for USAID. With us we have Tafar, who is the state director for USAID. She will be co-hosting today. And our guest, President Rosevonne Pato. Did I pronounce that right?
Rosevonne, yeah.
Okay, Rosevonne. And before we go on, a little disclaimer. Pacific Talk is a platform where invited guests are sharing their experiences. Any views, information, or opinions expressed during Pacific Talk are solely those of the individual sharing and does not represent the views of USAID, ASCC, or any other institution. Okay, let's begin. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How are you guys doing?
Good morning.
Okay.
How are you guys?
Pretty good. Something new that we'll be doing. So,
Well, we're excited. This is something of a new initiative. So thank you to Desiree, who is a communications specialist, to get this going. But yeah, we're hoping that Pacific Talks can actually share a lot of messages throughout the Pacific. And we figured what a perfect time to launch Pacific Talks here in American Samoa, and having our president being our very first one to bless our podcast initiative. So we're excited.
yeah. Yes,
Super
it
excited.
is something very, very new, but yes, a great way to start. Great way to start.
Well, President Rosevonne, I'm going to share a little bit about you with the audience. So in your bio, you have a lot of degrees, which is amazing. She has a Doctor of Education in Counseling Psychology, Master's of Education in Guidance and Counseling, and a BA in Liberal Arts Psychology major. So why did you study those? What drew you to that?
Yeah, I began in education. Well, my bachelor's degree was in psychology, just very interested in understanding people, behaviors, and how we communicate with one another. And that just led me into the field of education. But what I found is, as I started to teach, that there was so much more that I wanted to know, and so much more that I guess students would share with me that kind of geared me or steered me to go into counseling. So my master's degree is in school counseling, guidance and counseling, and that helped me to work with students at a different level, work with them outside of the classroom, not just inside, but outside of the classroom. And then I took a 25-year break before I went and worked towards my doctorate degree. In that time, I still had a real strong interest in the field of counseling and psychology. So my doctorate degree is in counseling and psychology, and it just helps me to work, I believe. My educational background just helps me to work better with people in general. And so that's what my education is all about.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think that kind of, in terms of education and psychology and learning about people, that's like a good segue into our icebreaker question, which is, when was the last time you didn't feel included?
I would say that was pretty recently. I just came back from a trip off island, which included all of the Pacific Islands, but there were several people, I guess, that didn't even know where American Samoa was, even though we're in the Pacific and we're in a group of, the region is the Pacific. It's still, that was the question, where exactly is American Samoa? So that was, a way of kind of trying to feel, if you don't know where we are, then it's difficult for me to explain that. So yeah, that was my last time feeling like kind of not included in.
Excluded.
Yeah, excluded. Right.
Interesting. Isn't it interesting? We've been here in American Samoa. Well, American Samoa existed. Well, I know way before the 1900s when we were part of the territory, right?
Right.
As a U.S. territory. But it's interesting how many of our neighboring countries don't know where we're at.
Right.
Other than the fact that we're the dot. But even our U.S. family, right?
Yeah, still do not know the exact location of American Samoa, or even the fact that we're a territory of the U.S. That's another kind of feeling of being excluded, is when they say, "Oh, you're part of the U.S." So that's also part. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I remember it too when I was like younger and I was like in elementary. They would be like, "Oh, where's your mom from? Where's your family from? Oh, American Samoa." And like even the teachers, there would be like the big maps on the classroom wall, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, so where is it?" And I'd like try to find it, but usually on those big maps it's so tiny.
Yeah.
And so it's like somewhere over here, and they're like, "Oh, you can't really see it. It must be so small." Ha ha ha. Yeah, but I just remember like feeling like, I mean, it's there. It's there.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's where my family's from. Right.
Yeah.
Do you think your journey? Sorry. Do you think your journey, Perez? All your years going through college, right? Do you think somewhere down the line throughout that journey, do you ever recall American Samoa being part of your conversation in your degree program?
Well, I know that no, not it wouldn't come up unless they're asking me about where I'm from. But the whole issue would be, it's that feeling of always having to try and justify where I'm from, or where we're at, and saying, it's that feeling of trying to be included in, when you're always there. But it's the awareness, I believe, the whole journey, and I believe this goes across the board with all of us. Our journey is a journey of trying to let others be aware of who we are and that we exist, regardless of whether you understand where I'm from. We're here, And I believe that's the real issue, is that it's not necessarily you or me, it's trying to make others understand, like American Samoa or the Pacific, or being part of the US, or being part of just overall a program, feeling included in the educational system on the whole, just because maybe someone doesn't understand that where you're from or where you're coming from. So that's been a journey I believe I've taken, but I believe many of us as students or as educators have that continual, I guess, journey to try and help others to see, that we're a part of everyone. It's just that maybe you're not yet familiar with that. Yeah. And I believe that's the
Know the
whole thing.
existence.
Yeah. Understanding the, that, yeah, that you exist, whether or not you're aware of it, we exist. So yeah, that's been my whole journey in education. And I believe, the other sad part of this is always having to justify, that because I'm from another place that maybe people are not familiar with, that you have to continue to justify that, we have, I'll give you an example. One of my biggest examples that I have is that, trying to justify that we speak English, or we have gone through a U.S. educational system. Those types of things are things that you continually have to justify. And it's sad that, because of others not understanding that you're continually, I guess, on edge, saying, we're part of this, we're part of the whole, and it's justifying that piece of the whole picture. That's what's been difficult. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I totally understand all of the things that you were sharing. And you've been the president of ASCC since 2016. Um, how has that process been, and how are you feeling about school opening up again and navigating it opening back up again in the middle of the pandemic that is still ongoing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a challenge. I believe ever since I've come on as president, there's one challenge after another. But specifically with the pandemic, it has been a whole new, I guess, a reform of understanding that we can still continue the offering of courses, students can continue their education. It's just seeing it or doing it in a different way, or there's a different format or avenue that we're taking, but it doesn't mean that education stops. And that's been a whole big new challenge for, I guess, all of us, not just for students, but for teachers who have been so set that this is how I teach, face to face. Even look at us right now, who knew we were going to be doing a podcast or, a Zoom kind, and we've been, as leaders here at the college, we've been meeting regularly through Zoom. That was never even thought of, before the pandemic. It was always face to face, always, gathering together in a particular room or place. And now this can be done, across the board. And I guess that's, it's a whole new, mindset for us to be able to continue what we're doing, but just in a different way, just being able to reach out. And I think this format is great because you don't have to be constrained. It's there, the constraints of trying to schedule a room or a classroom, or it's not there now because you can do it this way. And so it actually, although it may be a challenge, it actually is a real great, I guess, you have a bigger playing field to work with, unlike before. As a perfect example is with students. I think many students actually like this format because no matter where they were, they couldn't use the excuse, I couldn't get to class, I couldn't do this, the buses, the weather, you name it. You can still go on Zoom or you can still meet online. So it actually has opened up a lot of things that we could never do in being able to meet online and be able to offer classes. And there's just so many, what do you call, the challenges actually become, I'm trying to think of like great progress, in our, in being able to offer things so much differently, but in a bigger way. You don't have a limit too. Instead of like 15 students or 20 students, you can have hundreds of students in a classroom such as this. And it's the same with us. There's no real limit because the message can get across no matter where you are or where you're coming on. So it's been I think a plus for ASCC to move forward in this way, to use technology, to have the pandemic hit us and then allow us to use this type of format. But I think we also have had an advantage. The territory of American Samoa, we've actually had an advantage because we had 2 years to prepare for it. We had 20 and 21
Right.
that allowed us to prepare for this. So actually, when we were hit with the COVID-19 hitting us, in our community, we were actually prepared for it to hit. And so I think that has really helped us in so many ways. Yeah. Unlike other areas of the world where they were hit immediately and then you have to figure it out. We actually had it figured out and then it hit us. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What opportunities did you see ASCC benefiting from the COVID? And you shared a little bit about, we had 2 years to prepare as a COVID-free island territory,
Yes.
right? COVID-free
Yes.
for 2 years. It allowed us to be a little bit more flexible. And then we went into Code Red just recently in February this year. And then while we were in Code Red in this isolated state, what opportunities do you think opened up for ASCC during this time period?
Yeah. So over the past 2 years, I think one of the things we saw was the preparation in being able to equip our college with the technology and the upgrade of systems and so on. But also, what I saw is the community efforts, and I commend you, Sid, and the many different agencies that came together. And normally, if we weren't hit by the pandemic, everyone works in isolation. We all work in our own little, department or division. But what the pandemic and the preparation period did, even till now, when we were hit with and actually hit with COVID, what has helped us is that, you lean on one another. And the Department of Health, the Medicaid, the DOE, the governor's office. I mean, there was this big collaboration of the government and the community to try and make sure that our people are safe, and that we're prepared for what is to come. And I really believe we were very well prepared. And even to this point, many coming from off island, I saw where they're just beginning to open up restaurants and so on. It took them 2 years to shut down, and now they're just beginning to revive their economy. If you look at us, we took 2 months, and by the third month, we were beginning to start back up. I have to commend our community for that effort. In such a short time, we were able to get back on our feet. I also believe the preparation involved our vaccination drives, the need to get people to understand the importance of vaccination, to be safe, the wearing of masks, sanitation, all of these things that we take for granted, and we just think, oh, everything will be fine. We actually have the means to be able to do this. I also believe that ASCC benefited, like many of the different agencies and departments of the government here in American Samoa and off island. We benefited because there was an influx of funding to support us in being able to get to this point. And I believe without that type of funding coming into the college, it would be very difficult for us to get to where we're at. But I believe we're ready for the fall semester. We're going to be walking into a different way of looking at our college courses and programs. But I believe we're very well prepared. Yeah. Did that answer your question, Tafal? Was that okay?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
Okay. Yeah, that was really great. I love the whole conversation of you mentioned a lot of great things. You first mentioned about there's no one way to do something, more opportunities and becoming more accessible and making room for other places in the community coming together. And so with school opening up and this new year, what are the students kind of looking forward to? And is there any difference in terms of accessibility / inclusiveness on campus now with this new school year coming up?
So what we have just decided on as a executive leadership is that we will continue offering all of our courses in both ways, which is face-to-face as well as a component of the online offering of courses. The only classes that we will need to continue fully face-to-face would be our labs, our laboratories, our hands-on trades and skills courses. Those ones will be on campus 100%. But, I found, even though we will be doing that for this semester, I found that during the complete shutdown, which happened in 2020 and then again 2022, even labs were able to go online and do it through some means of being able to, provide the learning opportunities. They had some great practical experience, skill demonstrations, all being done this way. So as a college, what we will be doing for the fall, and this is my big announcement, is that all of the courses will go face to face, but Fridays, all Fridays will be our online time where the students, and we kind of did a portion of this in our 2020 shutdown. We went and we have tried several different versions of or percentages of how much is offered online and how much is offered face to face. But this time we've decided to dedicate one day, which is Friday, to our online. And it gives the students a chance to be able to work from wherever they are. And if they need to come onto campus to use our labs. And so I guess the inclusion part is it won't matter where you are. We will have computers and the opportunity for you to come on campus if you don't have access to technology. But if you do have access, you can do it from home or from wherever else. But another big thing that we will be doing, which we're hoping that this comes in like within August, we will be getting laptops and devices for our students to be able to check out. And this will all be done through the library. So even though kind of like how books are checked out, our devices will be checked out. So those students who do not own or are not able to get it, they will be able to check out a laptop or a iPad or some kind of device that will allow them to get into their online portion of their courses. So it's a little bit different this time, but it's to me, we've looked at many different ways, and that was a recommendation that was done by your director. Tafal was one of them, and then we had others that had suggested, for the checkout of devices to just make things more accessible. Because we forget, not everyone can purchase devices. Not everyone has something that they can use specifically for them. A lot of times, if you have a device, it's shared among everybody. And when everyone's online, who gets dibs on that device is an issue. So at least within this next semester, we will be able to have the devices available for students.
What a great way to address digital equity, education equity, addressing, socioeconomic limitations in our community. I do know ASCC had distributed MiFis and free data for some of the students when it first rolled out. And I think this is like it's setting a trend in our community that, when you say, why ASCC? You said, well, I can check out a laptop. I can check out an iPad, and it can support my schooling going to ASCC, no matter whether you qualify for financial aid or not, but you're enrolled at ASCC.
Yes.
And you're making education more accessible for all, with or without. And I think, I just need to do a quick plug in, like you heard it here at the You Said Pacific podcast. First, that you're going to get the laptop in August. Just go to the library, get your library account set up at ASCC, and you can check out a laptop to support your school.
Yes.
How awesome is that?
Yeah, that's such a great, a progression. And you're right. When you talk about equity, a lot of times what happens is it depends on whether you're eligible for financial aid, and this way it doesn't matter. as long as you attend here and you have your library card and you're eligible to check it out. Yeah, it's not like sorry, you're not eligible. There's no eligibility
Mm-hmm.
requirement other than to be enrolled here at ASCC. Yeah. So great efforts. And I have to say too, how this was made possible was from our funding. We have funding that has come through the institution, and many of our students for the past 1, 2, 3, 4 semesters, we have given out funding directly to students to be able to use it in whatever way they need it to get through successfully in their courses. But part of that funding is given directly to the college, and the college can decide how to use that to better the education of our students. And so that's one of the ways we're doing it, is to make sure we purchase devices that can be checked out and accessible to whoever needs to get a device. So yeah, and we heard it on this podcast.
Yeah, and what I love about that too is that not only is it like a great showing of equity and more accessibility, but also because different students, different people in general have different like ways of learning. And so
Yes.
some people just work better with structure, like being in the
Yeah.
classroom and like being
Yes.
right there face to face. And
Yeah.
other people are more like they work better with the flow. I don't know how to
Yeah.
describe that,
Yeah.
but it's like
Uh-huh.
they don't have a rigid structure that they have to follow, but they're still able to do the work.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool too.
Yeah. And you're right about that. Everyone has their own preference, and sometimes you think, I know for me, before I went online with my classes, when I was working on my program for my doctorate, I thought, oh, well, it's really cool. It'll all be online. I don't have to. Oh, to me, that was one of the most difficult, I think of between all of my degrees, my doctorate was maybe the most difficult because the majority of it was online. And to me, that was so challenging for me because I like to talk face to face. I like to meet people personally, and it was one of the biggest adjustments I had to do was to be in class. And during that time, we didn't have this. We did it all, we would chat back and forth, and that's how we did the online. And so even though we were, going live in our classroom, it was done through that way. And so we didn't get to see people's faces other than a photo that would be posted up next to their chat. So it was so challenging. And so everyone has their preference, and what we find is that students will move towards that type of what do you call, way of their learning, whichever way is their best learning. So what I wanted to share with you that will be a little bit different this fall is that our Tuesday, Thursday classes will be strictly face-to-face. So if you prefer face-to-face classes, Tuesday and Thursday are the days to choose when you're registering for classes. But if you prefer a mix of both, then you might want to take the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because the Monday, Wednesday will be face-to-face and Friday will be the online.
Awesome.
So it really gives you a choice. Pretty much all courses are taught, both they have sections that are on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they have sections of the same course that are on Tuesday, Thursday. So it really would be you and your preference as to whether you want it online or you want, a face-to-face course. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's everyone's different, and you learn
Mhm.
best the way you feel more comfortable in. And so it will be the choice of the students to decide how they want to take their courses.
I think this is a great practice because you mentioned something really well, really resonated with me, and that was the word choice. Yeah,
Yeah.
with so many things going on, so much isolation because of COVID, I think providing more choices, more opportunities for our local adult learners, it gives them an opportunity to pick something that best suits them and
Yeah.
their educational style and educational preference. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I really like that.
Yeah. And you're so right when it comes to that. I think before this whole pandemic, it really, our course offerings were not set up in this way where you had a choice. It was always, this is the way we offer it. And so now it's like, no, we can do it either way, but you decide how you want to do it. So yes, choice is a big thing. And I think the challenges that we're faced with, particularly with the pandemic, but in other ways too, they kind of allow you not only to get through the challenge, but to decide, okay, now what am I going to do that needs to be changed? Or what are some of the things that we never even thought of that we could do differently, and I think that's the other thing is that when you're faced with a situation, suddenly you see something very differently. Like now, I love meeting this way. I would never have ever chosen, this format of meeting because I just don't like doing things online. But, now it's like, oh, this is really cool. It's really neat to meet this way and to meet like for our leadership. And I know Tafa can
Mhm.
actually, um, she knows about it. It was very difficult to schedule a meeting with all of our leaders on a weekly basis. And you know what? We have better attendance on this in this type of format than we ever did before because now nobody can say, "Oh, sorry, I wasn't able to make the meeting." It's because no matter where you are, you can join our meeting. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Or
just neat.
or you save gas.
Or you save gas. Yeah, you don't have
now
to
that
come in.
now
Yeah.
that the price,
Oh,
spiked up at
yeah.
the gas station, what a
I
way to
know.
just save fuel and just get
Yeah, and
on the
you're so
Zoom.
right about that. Yeah. So the challenge I think only allows us to kind of what do you call step out of the box and look at other boxes or other ways of seeing what can be done. So yeah.
What do you think we still need to improve on, um, in regards to, accessibility and inclusion at the college?
Yeah. I think that where we really need to be more inclusive and accessible is it's at every level. It has to be like kind of like how we began in this podcast, how we talked about out in the US, the bigger picture, trying to be included in. I see that we are making efforts community wise and as a system, here at the college as an institution. But it has to be at every level. It has to be within our offices, within our classes, within our curriculum. Every level. It has to be like not like second nature, but just part of your everyday thing is to always have that inclusiveness as it's like just a regular part. But I believe we've moved a lot as an institution to better include and make things more learning more accessible, but it has to happen at every level, and that's where the real work is. It's even the way you deal with people, the language you use and all of that. It has to be really inclusive and just not allow that person to feel or even a group to feel like I'm here, and how do I make them understand, that I exist? So going back to how we began this, our talk, it's at every level we've got to start looking at what can we do better? What can we do better? And I have to commend you, said, for just always being a part. Another thing is including in key people that maybe consistently and continually remind us about that. Because sometimes what we do is we just continue to fall back on what we've always done. And we forget that, oh no, we moved ahead. We moved ahead how many miles ahead, and you're still back here. And that's what we have to do. We have to continually, I don't know if it's awareness or just continual reminders, of what we need to consistency in what we do. And that is a really important word, consistency, because so many times we start things and then, yes, it's all going great, and then we fall back into our old habits and our old ways, and then it's like, what happened? We were doing this and now we're not even doing it. So the consistency is so important, and that's at every level, not just institutional level, it's program level, units, individuals, every level. We have to be more consistent in, understanding and implementing the need for accessibility and inclusion.
I really love that answer.
Thank you. So yeah.
Yeah, that was like really great. And I just want to, because as you were saying before at the beginning of the conversation, you were talking about how, the last time is when you didn't feel included was when people weren't acknowledging that American Samoa existed. And I think that can happen. But it's like when all of these conversations and these things happen and like moving forward and progressing, we need everybody to join in the conversation, right? Like nobody should be left behind.
Yes,
like,
yes.
These human diversity and all the knowledge that you can apply and put together in like moving forward. And I know that your ASCC's mission statement as well is awareness of the Pacific and Samoan culture. And I'd love to like know what your vision is in connecting ASCC with the Pacific region.
Okay. Yeah, I believe that we actually are very connected with the Pacific. Every 2 weeks, I meet with the presidents of the community colleges here in the Pacific that are under the same accrediting commission, which is our ACC-JC. We meet every 2 weeks in this format. So that's another plus we have. We can meet wherever we are. Before that, we met once a year, in a meeting held somewhere in the Pacific. But now we meet every 2 weeks. And in meeting, what we do is we share two things. We share commonalities, what's happening there regarding COVID. And, and just sharing what's happening at at the college level, in the community colleges in the Pacific, that are all part of Pacific Secondary Educational Council. That's the PEC. Just in sharing what's common, we say, hey, yeah, we're doing that, or, and that really confirms, I guess, and support that what you're doing also works someplace else in the Pacific. And it's like a real, I guess, encouragement to keep going when you know that you've shared something that's very common among others. But the other thing we do is we share something a little bit different that we're doing a little bit differently. So just yesterday, I met with the president, and I was sharing with them this new career technology center that we're building here. And I was saying it's going to be a little bit different because we are going to combine it with DOE. And we'll have high school students coming in, and then after they will be going into the college level. So I was sharing this with them, and they just thought, wow, what a great endeavor that the college has, included DOE into this, high school students on campus. So, in sharing something that you're doing a little bit differently or you have plans for, everyone wants to know like your progress, like how's it going? And then right after our meeting, I got an email from one of the presidents that said, you know what? We actually, the campus was a high school, and then we converted it into a college. So we still have very much facilities that were set up for a high school that are now used for college. And so she was saying, similar to here, this used to be a high school, Mapusanga High School, and now it's the community college. We've 50 years of being a community college, but the thing about it is, you begin to share like these are the things we saw that are very different in high school and college, but these are the things that really work well that can be used for both college and high school. So she gave me a few tips on what to look out for regarding the facility since it's not built yet. And I was like, wow, it's the sharing of what makes you unique culturally or just your community, what makes it different. Mm-hmm. And then also, as a region, the Pacific, this is what it is. But I also wanted to share a big thing that we've never done that our tech is doing. For the first time, we're going to DC. All of the presidents of the college in the tech, we're all going to go to DC, and we're going to try and get the Pacific region colleges to be recognized as its own entity. And why that's important is because if you look at inclusion, we're often connected to Asian Pacific, Native American, Native Hawaiian, but we don't stand alone as a Pacific region. And so we're all going to go together and try and help those in DC understand the importance of the Pacific. And why I think this is a great step forward is that it also helps us to understand how important it is for us to make it known that when we stand together as a region or we stand together as a whole group, we're going for higher ed, Pacific region community colleges. That's what we're going for. But it just helps us it helps others to understand that you're still there. Whether you connect us with this group or this group or this group, we're still there. And so I think this is important for all of us, is that without that, you kind of like put people into categories, right? And classify them. No, you don't belong here because you're supposed to be in this group. Whereas you can be this group, but it's just because they don't have it on the category. So, I wanted to share this example with you is, how frustrating it is when you're trying to either pay a bill or purchase something and you try and use your credit card and they don't have the scroll down that has American Samoa. You have to put yourself in a state. So most of us put us in Hawaii because it's the closest one, but then it rejects you because your zip code doesn't match the state. And that's how frustrating it is. That's the example I use. That's how frustrating it is because people want to put you into a category. No, you are a state. You're not a state. And so just because you don't have us listed down doesn't mean that we're not part of purchasing or part of paying bills. It's just that they don't have you in some category or classification that meets their needs, but it doesn't meet your needs.
Exactly.
And so I think of how frustrated I am whenever I do that. It's like, oh, they don't have me. They don't have American Samoa on the scroll down, And so what do you do? Yeah. And so that's the same thing, when it comes to inclusion and accessibility is people are always trying to put you in a category and yet we're there. It's just that your category doesn't fit because that's the way you classify, somebody or a group. And it's so frustrating.
And hands down to the PPAC, the Pacific President.
Yes.
Leadership, the council.
Yes.
Because and you're not alone in this. Many of the Pacific Islanders feel this way that the non-Pacific Islanders and the non-Asians pretty much identify what subgroup we belong to, right?
Yes.
What group defines us.
Yeah.
And I always thought that, how is it that we fall under Asia, America, or Asian, and then it became this whole category of Asian and Pacific Islanders. But I really, really am grateful that the PPAC is moving towards that initiative to show presence because so this is where the geographic isolation disconnects us from those in DC because, we cannot afford to go there every day to show presence, right?
Yeah.
But then it also disconnects us with who we are as Pacific Islanders. So I think you brought up a good point where, no, we're Pacific Islanders. Let us define ourselves.
Let us define
ourselves.
Yes.
And then you brought up another good point about inclusion, how you go online and you don't see American Samoa in there, or I can tell you one thing where we would find ourselves most of the time. It's under the category of a country.
Yeah.
We're either a country, American Samoa country, or we're under the other. The other category. You find yourself, you do the drop down and you find yourself on the other. And the other thing that as my years of being under USID, that kind of like helped mold me the concept of inclusion, the concept of acceptance, right? I started to pay more attention to inclusion with the smallest details. So when they categorize the alphabet, when you go to the drop-down menu and they alphabetize the states, and then I get excited, they have American Samoa, but you're categorized after Wyoming.
Yes. You're right. So
if
you're
we're
not in the
going to
alphabetical, yeah, category.
order,
Yeah,
so
order.
basically you're included, but you're really excluded because you're
You're
after
there.
W,
Even though you
even though
begin
you
with
start with an A,
A.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so true. That's so true. But you're right. What makes it also difficult, you brought up a good point, is you have to find where they place you. You know, like you said, you're not under a state. You could be under a country, or you could be under other. It's like this difficulty in saying, now where am I? Where do I belong? And it's because they've already put you in a certain place. And so it's like, oh, there I am, I'm in other, or there I am, I'm in a country. Yeah. Yeah.
So inclusion, even as a Pacific Islander, it's an ongoing journey to see where are
That's
you,
true.
right?
Yeah. Where are
Where
you?
where where
Yeah.
are you included, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I also see it being in the territory, the best of two worlds, right? You're part of the US, you know, you're part of the US, but as Pacific Islanders, we're in the Pacific around our people,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
specifically in American Samoa, but we're around everyone who are Pacific
Yeah.
Islanders, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And you're right. I do have to say that I believe we are, what do you call, in the midst of, you know, of two worlds. It's like where we have the good, from, we also have the bad from both, but, in more optimistic, I would say that we do have, we're under the US, but we also, and we're included in, with the US, but we're also part of the Pacific, and that makes it, even. I also have to, I don't want to get into politics and things, but I also have to just bring up part of the problem that we have in being included or not, goes back to our history and what our political status, or where we are geographically, or our history of who we came under, and so in in all due respect to our neighboring island, independent Samoa, you know one culture, one language, just two politically different, um, governments, or that have caused us both a divide as well as, a unity. And so that's another whole big thing. But I know too, in our Pacific, um, uh, trip that we will have with the pet, it's so great. But these are just those under the U.S., under the accrediting committee. But overall, for all these other, but that'll be a whole other thing. But I was going to say, for all these other Pacific islands, they might not get categorized together with us. They might have to find their own classification, but we are going, it's a start where we will try and be recognized as a Pacific region of, higher education. So that's the first step, hopefully, in us being successful in getting the word out to DC and all of those lawmakers and decision makers, that it'll open the door for others to also come forward. Yeah.
Mm. With all of that being said, like everything that being said, because
We've said a lot.
this was a really great conversation. And I'm just trying to be mindful of time. With all of that we talked about, what do you think President Rosevonne does it mean to be inclusive?
I really believe that if you are to be inclusive, it means that you let down these borders and barriers and just kind of like, you know, it's like if you I was to use an analogy, it's kind of like, the free world. You walk into this place and wow, everyone, everyone's open to getting land and settling here or doing, and you don't have these, oh sorry, you're not from this village, or oh sorry, you're not from this family, and I think that um, we have to sometimes just let down all those things that restrict us. It's the restrictions, similar to our, finding our place in where are we categorized by this. I think classification and categorization are important, especially for data and, being able to track and all of that. But it restricts us from kind of seeing outside of those borders that we set around us. And I would say inclusion allows us to maybe have soft borders, if there's any such thing. You know how they say a hard copy and a soft copy of this? I think there should be soft borders, like, you need to have some kind of limitations, but not to the point where it's like just shutting everyone out, and or even one person feels excluded, already is too much, and so yeah, I really believe that inclusion allows us to just let go a lot of those things that we've been taught to put up there, and just put up your walls. Now it's kind of like let's have virtual walls rather than physical walls. It's just different.
Yes.
Virtual walls. That's a new word for me.
Yeah,
It
virtual
existed
walls.
it existed all this time, all these years, but there wasn't a name to it, probably because it was virtual.
It's been out there. It's there. Yeah. And so
I
that's
love
pretty
that.
much what it is. I think there are also, I would say, inclusion also um, allows you to meet and be a part of people. It's all about people. It's all about us being able to feel a part of a group, but also being able to feel comfortable expressing yourself to others. I
Mm.
I I would say before becoming a leader, I would be a little more in the background, quiet. And I know Tafa can relate to this, but there, as a leader, you also have to be able to express those things that maybe nobody wants to talk about, and that's also a wall that you have to break down. Sometimes they're saying, oh, like when I raise my hand in certain meetings, there I can just see like, oh no, she's gonna talk, because they know me, I talk forever. But I also uh, don't hold back as much as I did. If it needs to be said, then let's say it. And I think that also is part of inclusion, is not being afraid to have the voice when you need to have that voice. And inclusion isn't just physical presence, it's being included because you have that voice in that arena, wherever it is that you're able to voice your concern or your issue, no matter how difficult it is. And I say this also because I believe a lot of our cultures, Pacific cultures, are very I'm trying to be respectful in the way I say this, hierarchical, very much title set. And so if you don't have this title or this position, sometimes you're not included in the conversation or your voice cannot be heard. And I'm saying this now because I'm president. I have a lot of voice, and people say, oh, she's, and they can't really shut me out as much as I was shut out before. My voice, I mean. But now that I have it, I can see how much of it I never did or never thought I could do. And that's the other thing. Knowing you can have a voice is really important too. Because when it's set by culture or there's these boundaries like, sorry, you're not at this level, and so your voice shouldn't be heard. That's also a reason for exclusion, is that voice, no matter where you are, here or here or here or here, the voice should be at least represented. If you can't be the one to say it, it's represented someplace at that level. Yeah.
Love that.
See, I told you I can talk and talk and talk. So
No, you're good. You're good. This is
I really like. I'm resonating. I'm resonating with a lot with what you said. So
Yeah.
most likely we have to do a part 2, a sequel.
Did you
and then
have
you
any?
you need to focus me then, because I could go off every.
Okay. Tafai, did you have any last question? No.
No, I mean, I really enjoyed the conversation. You brought up a lot of experiences and a lot of the you know a Pacific Island. You brought up a lot of identities. So there's a lot of intersections here in this conversation about inclusion. As a president, as a woman, as a Pacific Islander, um, as a minority institution, remote rural community, and just grateful that you actually had accepted the invite. And we hope that we can continue this conversation to keep the story alive and keep the experience to be shared amongst the other generation. And maybe some may have other stories and experience about inclusion. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. I normally don't have the freedom to express myself, So thank you for allowing me this opportunity. It's not just sharing the good things, it's also sharing like the mistakes you've made or what you have, the learning. Maybe I shouldn't say mistakes, the lessons you have learned, in the experience you've had. And so thank you for allowing me to share that, because I don't often have the opportunity or the avenue to share a lot of these things that I've learned, my lessons learned. But thank you. I think this is a great way to have people be able to speak and voice. So just continue to do this. I mean, with whoever and whomever, let's have our virtual soft borders. Yeah. Virtual borders. Let's keep it that way. But thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Desiree,
Yeah.
Tafa, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that we had you on in this whole conversation. Did you have any questions that you would like to leave with our audience, so that after they listen to this podcast, they can take it with them and just think about it?
Yeah. I just think your beginning question was an important one, because that kind of led me into kind of looking at, what has been my journey, is knowing how did you, when was the last time you felt this way? I think that is so important, because then it makes you feel like, yeah, I think everyone can relate to being not included and feeling that feeling. So I think that was a great beginning, is to hit us on our emotional level, because then it opens you up to feeling like, yeah, I can relate to this. So thank you for that. I think that's what I'd like to leave with the audience, is just being able to feel comfortable in sharing your feelings and just real about it. Oftentimes when you're presenting, and I don't see this as a presentation, I see it more as sharing. But when you're presenting something, it's so informational that it gets too much heady, Whereas when you do it right from here, the heart, yeah, I think it reaches so much more people. So thank you for beginning with that, because that emotional level just, kicked it off. So if there's anything I was to leave, is, being, speaking from the heart and just being able to share real experience. So thank you, Desiree.
Yay. Okay. Yeah, thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we hope you guys enjoyed this conversation, and that you'll take it with you throughout the day, week, think it over. And this is Pacific Talk.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.